So we are back. This is the third episode of the Sean Trey Show. I'm continuing my narcissistic spree of the show named after myself. And I have a really cool guest tonight, Mr. Benjamin James. Welcome to the show. Now, I know a bit about you, but let's assume that our guests do not. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from,
Sure.
what you do, all that good stuff?
Well, okay. So yeah, you've already introduced me. My name is Benjamin James. I'm English. I'm from Brighton, UK. Although right now I live in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. And I'm a songwriter. I'm a record producer, music producer, and all-round musician.
That's awesome.
In a
Now,
nutshell.
right? So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Let's start off with, okay, so you're a songwriter, a musician. What producer kind of wear a lot of hats in the music industry? What do you see yourself as first and foremost?
I want to say, well, it's tricky, right? I was thinking about
Right.
this when I was preparing for to come and do this with you. I mean, musician is like the all round thing. Do you know what I mean? I studied to be a musician, and you're right. As a musician, I wear lots of hats. I play guitar, I play piano, I sing, and then that kind of extends into like, okay, I play guitar, I want to record guitar. Okay, now I'm a studio engineer. Now I'm a producer because I want to make one of the songs I've written. Oh, hang on a sec, I wrote a song. Now I'm a songwriter as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
to me, all those things are encompassed by the term musician. But does that answer your question?
And it's interesting because I had a discussion with someone recently, not on the show, but just recently about how the industry, the music industry, has gone through some type of revolution with this decentralization, massively decentralization of the creative process. It used to be that if let's imagine, go back to Elvis Presley time. You would go to a place and there would be a person that would have this console that was, I think, the Elvis's time, they were recording on tape still. It was, I think they were on to tape. I don't know what they recorded on before.
They carved it into like wax cylinder.
Right, exactly. So, and it was this really, and it was an expensive process. And I once looked at, I remember there was a really interesting fact that I had heard from a long time ago about what it used to cost for the music industry to take a singer from step one up until, a professional point in their career. And it was an insane amount of money versus now, if you've got a computer and you've got a sound card, doesn't mean that you're a musician yet, but it means that you can create your own music. Go ahead.
I often think about this, when you talk about going back to the days of Elvis, and I always think it's really interesting when you talk about like a record producer, which is what, that's where the term record producer came from back in those days, and how the term has changed. Right?
Yes.
Back then, the term record producer was much closer to a film producer, where it's like their job is to pull together all the components that you need to create this record. We need a drummer, we need a horn section, we need a gospel choir, and they would arrange all these things. And often they would have a musical edge to them too, so they'd be able to, decide what arrangements they wanted. But it wasn't like, I'm a music producer, so I'm going to program some drums, and I'm going to play this, I'm going to play this, I'm going to mix it and write it and do all that. They had a much more specific role.
And this is something that my wife is a singer, and I would say that I am, if I had a definition for myself, I'm much more of a film director, movie producer. I've been working on music videos and new media for a long time, but I identify more with the film side. I love music. I've learned music. I do a lot of our audio engineering. I can't mix, but I do a lot of our sound recording for when we do stuff at home and in our home studio. But when my wife would talk about her producer, when I first started seeing her production, it's like, as a film producer, my motto is I get shit done, but yet I don't do it. I pull this guy in, I get the director, I get the DOP, I get these people, and I bring them all together, and I make sure that the project gets finished. But I'm not always like, hands-on. But with a music producer, they are, really in there in ways. Now, that's interesting. Now, with there was one thing you touched on too, and I want to poke at that too, because I remember going to this one show that my wife was singing at, and there was the show's producer was sitting there, and he was doing all the arrangements and stuff, and he was like, okay. And he stepped over and he jumped onto the piano and he starts like, okay, let's try this. And then like the guitarist was not doing what he wanted. So he walked over, he's like, picks up the guitar and he's like, I'd like it to be a little bit more like this. And like the guy's like, okay, yeah, it was just amazing. And then, and then the bassist was kind of like fudging his bass line. And he's like, no, he picks up the bass. He's like, I was just like, damn, man, how many instruments do you play? And there is this definition of a musician, and this is not just a person who is a singer or a pianist, but a person who has deep dived into the topic of music. And would you think that you are one of those people that's kind of gone down the rabbit hole of music? Do is that
For sure. I think anyone that spends enough time in the music industry kind of naturally falls down that hole or jumps into it, whichever, whether it's on purpose or not. I do think that, but having said that, I do think you have to want to do it. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of people are really good at specializing in one thing. And I think other people are more all-rounded, but perhaps a jack of all trades, and that's that's how I would describe myself. I wouldn't say I'm like have one thing that is like my speciality, or that I'm a virtuoso as an instrumentalist and one thing or something. But I can play multiple instruments. I can write songs. I can produce you. I can mix those things. I can arrange your backing vocals. I can do all those things. And to me, that is really what, certainly for me, it makes me be able to do my job to my highest level, to to the best ability, because I don't need to. I understand every element of those things, and when it comes together, I'm able to put that together, if that makes sense. I think that's really important. But then I also think, I look at some amazing guitarists, amazing pianists, and I wish I could play to that standard, but actually it's not useful for my career. So.
That's a good point. It's like every time I in my film work, it's like I can edit at a basic level, and that's all I need to do. Because if I was one of those guys that could put off these amazing transitions and these beautiful videos, it wouldn't necessarily serve my career at that point. Now, there's something that you touched on, and I want to ask you about this, because earlier today, one of my friends posted on Facebook, and it was this really interesting. He's like, well, how did the post go? It was along the lines of like, he's like, I just listened to the new Halsey album, and I'm going to say this, I could really use some more Nine Inch Nails, but it was amazing listening, because I guess Trent Reznor produced the new Halsey album. And so that vibe was in that album. And as a producer, you sometimes are in the composer, it's not always music for you, right? Yeah. And how do you feel about that? Do you prefer producing for things for yourself, or do you enjoy the process of creating for other people as well?
I like to like you're right. My job is to make the record for someone else, and I think again that the role of producer does fall into two camps. You have your producers like your Mark Ronsons and your Pharrells that have a really distinct sound, and that's what people want when they go to that producer, or they're looking for that thing. We all have our own areas that perhaps we're better at, or that we're more comfortable in, that perhaps we gravitate to that sound. But again, personally, for myself, in the same way that I like to be a jack of all trades in terms of the things I can do within the realm of the music industry, and as a musician, I would also say the same for production, where it's like, I don't, what do you need for this record? What is the sound that you want, and how can I achieve that? And now, if as a producer for someone, actually the best way to achieve that sound isn't for me to play guitar or for me to do everything, then that's also my role as a producer to outsource that and find the right person, because I can't do everything, but I should be able to achieve that, and then I guess the only one other thing I'd add for that is I like a challenge. So if someone's like, I need a funk metal song, or some bizarre sound that's not been done before, or a genre that I haven't produced before, I'm 100% not afraid to try and achieve that. Do you know what I mean? And you have to research, you have to study, and listen to the genre itself to find out what parts it's made up to kind of achieve that, and that's I love to do that too, because that's how you learn,
right?
And that's one of the reasons why I was an artist myself, a performing recording artist for 6 or 7 years before I got into production. And one of the things I loved when I started producing was like, today I can do like pop rock, and tomorrow I can do R&B, and I can work with all these artists that are bringing new elements to me that I've not really had an opportunity to explore, because I've been so focused on doing this one particular style of music that was for my band. So I think that's why I don't work as an artist anymore, and I just do production.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it's like you get to, and there's also the ability to, it's like almost like Michelangelo, where you get this big thing of granite or marble. They don't carve granite. Granite would be like, what do you call it? Mount Rushmore or something in the U.S. Yeah. But this big piece of marble, and then you chip away until you reveal this thing underneath. And that's one of the things too with music. There's so many layers, and there are just the different layers of instrumentation. I took as I was trying to learn more to help with my wife's music more and to just be better at what I'm doing for us, I took this really interesting class at Berklee College of Music, and it was just on listening. And it was a really interesting class though, because it's like, we listen for fun, and it's just like, that sounds nice, but that's not the way you listen to music when you are working with music. You have to start, really breaking things down. And there were such simple things as like the concept of panning, and it's this, people think, oh, left and right, but there is just this art to where instruments are placed. Is it forward? Is it back? Where is it? Does it fit? Is it large or small? And not just that, like each genre has its own style. Like if you're talking about jazz is going to be, spread out like you're at a jazz club, where you've got the drummer over here, and over here you're going to have the bass, and things are spread out that way. Versus, you listen to modern pop music or things like that, and it's it's much more, you have your like Billie Eilish, your drums are really panned hard left and right. There's not a lot. It's very much this, almost symmetrical type of a thing.
There's a formula for each genre, yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. That doesn't mean to say it has to be followed, but
Yeah.
99% of the time it is.
And that's just interesting. And how did you come to this career? So let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started on this musical journey?
Well, like most musicians, or maybe not most, but a lot. I started young. I started classical piano when I was 7 or 8, I think,
Mm-hmm.
until I up to 14, and was learning saxophone and piano, and then I was in secondary school, and I suddenly noticed like all the cool kids play guitar, and I was like, I want to do that. Like I'm in the jazz and the orchestra, like Disney classics. And saxophone, and they're playing Jimi Hendrix, and I'm like, what is this? And I want to do that. So I begged to my parents, like, please let me learn guitar. And they said to me, you're playing enough instruments already. You're not going to buy you lessons, pay for you to have lessons on anything else, but we'll get you this acoustic guitar. So I took that, and I just took everything I learned from my music theory from piano and stuff. So, this scale, this chord, I can figure this out on guitar. So I put a lot of my own effort into that, because that was what I wanted to do, and
Mm-hmm.
when you're 14, 15, 16, you just lock yourself in the bedroom at night. And I was playing Metallica and stuff like that for a long time. And I think that definitely helped me kind of solidify what I've learned on those other instruments, to when you have to apply it to something new, as opposed to just being kind of spoon-fed, good working through a textbook or
Yeah.
books and examinations like that.
Well, you also point out one thing that you got that early foundation in classical music theory, which I think is so. You don't always see kids get that. The kids that go straight into guitar, that go straight into these things, and it's not that there's a wrong way to learn it, but there's got to be, it's great. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm in two minds about music theory. I think it's super important. I think anyone that plays music should attempt to understand it to some degree. I remember when the pieces started coming together, and it was literally like my mind just went, I understand this new whole thing, or this bit over here suddenly joins to this, and it was literally, I remember vividly this map, kind of this picture appearing in front of my eyes as I learned more, and that was an amazing experience. But actually, on the flip side, it gives you, like we were just saying about, every genre has a formula, mix, blah, 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 which is the antithesis of what real creativity is, real art is, which is, being creative. I don't want to put my drums over here and put a weird, like, bit crusher on the vocal and, like, do it. Like, because that's not classical or jazz, do whatever you want. So I do think the other side, and I remember in my band back when I was an artist again, I came from the very deeply trained theoretical side, and the girl that I wrote with was kind of much less trained, and we both wrote songs, and when she would sit down and she'd write songs, I'd hear these chords she was going to, and my gut, my kind of reflex would be, you can't change that chord, that's not in the key, or that, it doesn't work. And I'd be thrown off by it. But it was after a second listen, a third listen, those were the moments in those songs that she was writing that were my favourite parts, because it was like, I don't expect this. I'm being taken somewhere where I'm not predicting what's going to come already, or what's going to come next. And that really opened my eyes and made me change my own songwriting, because I suddenly realised, if every time I'm just working through this formula, I'm not giving the audience or the listener something to make them, like, I don't know, spit out the tea or whatever they're doing, in a good way or in a bad way. But that's music is tension and release. It should be like lull you in, and catch you, and keep people's attention to a song. So right. I think it's good. the ideal situation would be able to have music theory and know to switch it off, which I've learned to do now. But 10 years ago, I was just theory. That's what I knew.
When I was a younger man in college, I studied. I sang in a gospel choir, and it was really cool and really amazing experience. And the choir leader was this guy named Jeremy Price, and Jeremy was an amazing organist, pianist, and he was self-taught, and he would just operate outside of the box. And he was literally, very few people have I met that I would describe as a virtuoso. Jeremy was there. And he would do stuff on this organ that was just, and he would be playing in the gospel churches, and people were just blown away by him. I remember he'd be like doing these, and suddenly he would throw down this chord that was extremely unorthodox, but the way he played it, and people were just like, damn, that's amazing. And it was just unexpected, and it was because he would think outside the box, because he took a chance with something, and so that's really interesting that you bring up that training versus going kind of freestyle with it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can be said for a lot of things. I'm a martial artist, and when you train martial arts, this is the way to do this throw, step here, do it. But then when you go and are actually in the ring with someone or competing, it doesn't work that way. You just get it done. You have to find a way to get the thing done. You get this man on the ground. Like, you fell that way instead of this way? Oh, who cares, man?
It made me think, actually, someone recently just, gave me the analogy of about studying and stuff. And they brought up martial arts, and they're like, you learn all these rules and stuff, and up to the point where you finish, your black belt. But that's really, from that point on, that's when it begins.
Yeah.
And that's the same with music, learn all your theory and stuff, but actually it's putting it into practice and learning what works, what doesn't work, and what you need to, like you say, break the rules and change to fit each situation.
I was listening to some, I last year, one of the things that, was, one of the things that I've been trying to do, you're a new dad within the last, was it a year and a half, right?
13 months.
13 months. Congratulations. One of the things I've been doing for my daughter is building a music library. And I've been deep diving on records and CDs, and there's this absolutely crazy market for CDs and records in Vietnam that I didn't know existed. It's awesome. I got into a couple of these groups, and I just spent way too much money the last year and a half on stuff. And I had to step back from records because those get expensive. Amazingly awesome, but expensive. But I was listening to some jazz recently, and it was just like, I'm always amazed by how jazz just throws so much theory out the window, and they just, there's this how would you say it? I just have always loved improvisation and this idea of making stuff up as you go. But
this is the thing, right? Because I think with any, you can always find a way to explain stuff through theory. This is what really amazes me with music, because you can listen to jazz and you feel like that just makes no sense. But deep down, there is some, there is a level of they're planning what they're doing, but it's so 100 levels past what the layman's term of theory, diatonic major scale is that to any most people's ears. Don't get. I fucking know it. So
it's okay. No worries. It's exactly. It's like, I imagine an analogy would be when I play chess. I think maybe, if I'm lucky, I'm pulling 2 moves ahead. I'm not a great chess player. Those guys are 30 moves ahead. It's it's just, they've seen the whole game.
I play chess. I'm thinking I'm playing drafts or something. Backwards.
Right. You learned guitar. Where did you go from there? Did you go to college in music? Or?
That was a long side path.
Hey,
I learned guitar. I
it's
studied.
life. That was our own little jazz side path there.
Yeah, right. I went off to university. I studied. I specialized in guitar, but the degree was all round. It kind of gave you a little bit of session work skills and a bit of songwriting, that kind of thing. Pretty, which was good. But actually, the main thing I learned from studying was the academic side of higher education. I definitely didn't improve as a guitarist at university, but all the other elements around me, understanding of the business, and being able to write an essay about music history, I got really good at doing that. But it did put me in a room with when it was a music institute for studying contemporary music. So I was exposed to hundreds of other people that were starting bands and stuff. So it was really a nice scene, a nice clique of people to kind of be with and take influence. And that was when I started my band with one of the girls I was studying with.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just was I totally understand that. I've been doing my master's in screenwriting right now, and I just took this one class, and it was on oh man, what was it? It was literally like on the parts of language, like, and I was just like, and every paper I wrote, I was like, there is no way that I will ever use this. But I mean, there was one or two things that I took out of that class, but yet the classmates that I met and the stories that other people were telling, and when I looked at other people's writing assignments, it helped me to start thinking in different ways. And and that was one of the things that my school was really good at, is they're really good at forcing us to interact with the other students, to get feedback from them, to talk to them. And I think that that's one of the best things that you can find about a school program, is that you get that camaraderie and that opening of your mind. Like, because there was one thing that you pointed out, and I really like the way you described that you came from this world of classical piano and saxophone, and you guys were playing Disney numbers, and then suddenly you met these guitarists. My daughter was watching Trolls World Tour tonight, and it's just a silly movie, but like there was this really interesting thing where it, even just for her, she was like, wow, Dad, what is this other style of music? And I've been trying my hardest to give her different musical appreciation per se. But like the other day, we play, I'll play just all types of stuff, jazz, rock, and all this. But then the thing that she loves is the Spider-Man record. And so it's the soundtrack to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the new Miles Morales animation. It's actually a pretty good soundtrack, and it's, hip hop mixed with other things. And she comes in and I put it on, and she just sat there on my couch, and she just sat down, and she's like, yeah. You're 5. I didn't even know what I was doing at 5. My child's like laying back on my couch with like music appreciation. And I was like, wow, I'm doing something right with the daddiness. But it was interesting that you talked about how there's this shift in perspective. Now, you moved to Vietnam and started working in the music industry here. Was there any level of first of all, why did you come to Vietnam? What was it that inspired you and brought you here? And then did you find any I don't know per se culture shock, but like was there any type of a realignment that you had to make with how you approached music? So how did you find yourself in Vietnam?
Yeah. So I came to Vietnam. I took a kind of sabbatical from what I was doing in the UK at the time. I felt like I was at a time where if I didn't take the opportunity to travel and see the world a bit, that I wouldn't until I was, because my career it had changed, right? So I'd been in a band for 7 years, and we were doing a lot of amazing stuff. We were touring across America and Europe and playing with a lot of big artists, and we're very close to being on the cusp of like a really good record deal, and a few things kind of fell through, and it just didn't work. And so,
and I want to interrupt you real quick. I've heard you perform. I've heard you sing. You are an amazing vocalist as well. Like, you really sing well. I was cracking up. There was one time where we had this thing where my wife was joking. You came to one of my wife's show, and and my wife was like, "Who can I get to sing on stage?" And you're like, "Oh, pick me." And I was like, "Oh God, he sings better than me. Don't pick him." You sing really well, man. And so I just want people that are listening to know you are an amazing musician. Like, I'm vouching for you. We can put up some clips and whatever you want to do at the end of the video. I'd love if you don't mind, we could share at the end of the video one of your songs or something.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But continue there. I interrupted you.
It's all right. Anytime you want to interrupt to flatter me. Where was I? Yeah. Anyway, so long story short,
it didn't work out.
It didn't work out. And so that was when I started shifting into music production. And I started, I love what I'm doing here. I was producing all the records for my band, and so I learned the skills, or was building my skills to do it that way. So I was like, and now I'm going to do this with other people. I've got friends who are in bands, and I love the process. And so I started doing that for a couple of years, and I felt and I had a really good client base, and working with a lot of independent artists and kind of new artists in Brighton. And I felt I was at a point where I was like, okay, if I want to take a bit of time for myself and travel, then I have to do it now. Because if I don't do it now, I won't want to stop this momentum anymore.
Yeah.
So I took 6 months, and I came to Southeast Asia, India, and Nepal, and stuff like that. I came to Vietnam.
When was that?
That was 2015. Okay. 2015. And everywhere I went, I was like, I want to know what the recording studios are like. I want to see some live music. So in Nepal, I spent like 4 hours hiking through Kathmandu to find this one recording studio that I could find. Awesome. And I went and visited this place, and went and watched lots of live music. And I was really impressed by the musicality of people, the quality of these bands. That most of them were cover bands I was seeing in bars and stuff, but doing amazing versions of all the songs that I knew growing up. And but in Kathmandu, which to me is the opposite side of the world culturally and geographically. So yeah, it really pricked my ears up for there's this other exciting world of musicians doing stuff. So I did that in Nepal and Thailand, and then when I got to Vietnam, I did the same. My intention was to stay here a little bit longer, and what I loved when I first came to Vietnam was I felt like the balance between what was familiar and what was completely unfamiliar was perfect. It wasn't too weighted one way. Thailand was like too like touristy Western holiday thing. India and Nepal were like just a little bit too far away, but Vietnam was like, it just felt like the mixture of everything, the world essentially was all here for me. And again, I was like, I want to go check out the studios, and I very quickly made some really good friends, and got and someone just happened to be needing a producer to produce a record. So I was like, I'll do this. Love it, sweet. And that just made me realize, so if I can find work here, and not only that, but I can be in a new country and have new experiences and learn a new language. I guess a little bit in the same way that when I say, if someone wants me to produce a genre I've never done, I like that challenge.
Yeah.
And I think in life, to me, the challenge of working here was way more exciting than in the UK, because I'd done that not only just for the 2 years of producing, but also the 6, 7 years in a band in the industry. And I'd seen a lot, and I was perhaps at that time I was a little bit tainted and just wanted to remove myself from it. So yeah, that's how I ended up here. And I went back. I was here. I stayed 6 months, and I was like, and I worked for 6 months with a bunch of artists. And I was like, this works for me. I like this. And then I went back to the UK, and I bought lots of my equipment, everything that I could pack into like suitcases and stuff, and brought it back here to kind of really make a new life here.
That's awesome.
A new career. And here I am, almost 6 years later.
And where do you find yourself doing right now in Vietnam? Well, not at this moment. We're kind of in a lockdown right now, but
Yeah.
what have you been doing, in the last, year and a half or 2 years of your career? Where are you at right now? What are you focusing on at this moment?
What hat am I wearing right now?
Yeah, kind of. What hat are you wearing right now?
Yeah. Honestly, the last couple of years, my main focus has been songwriting, which is something I've always done, but was never something that I naturally gravitated to over production or performing. I was always like, I love singing, I love playing, and I love producing and recording music. But songwriting, I write songs here, but if I'm producing with artists, often they have their own songs written, so just kind of working with that. But actually, what I do now with the company I work with here is songwriting and co-writing with Vietnamese artists and artist development, which is kind of part of the process. Do you know what I mean? The scale of co-writing goes from being in a room and just helping play the piano and add some chords, into someone who's very creative and very capable of writing their own songs already, but perhaps are just missing a couple of the little skills or bricks in the wall that I can provide for them, all the way up to I have to kind of spoon feed. But
no judgment on either side. They're just different places on the scale. Exactly. Yeah.
And in the same way that we were talking about earlier about some people kind of specialize. I don't expect an amazing singer to also be an amazing songwriter.
Yeah.
Because they're already an amazing singer, right? So, and likewise, an amazing songwriter, maybe they can't sing amazingly well, but I can help coach them to sing better. But the songs are amazing enough for that to be their, that's their value, that's their currency.
That's really interesting. And what has, and this is something that I for me has definitely shifted things. Pre-2016, when my daughter was born, my vision, my goals in my career were different than now. There's this added sense of, I wouldn't say urgency, but this sense of purpose that I have in my career to not always to work harder, but there's this, let me put it this way. For me, after my daughter was born, I wanted my work to have a purpose. I wanted my work to have, not to say I'm going to not heal the world, but, I want to leave something that contributes to it. You know what I mean? And contributes to the world that she's taking part in. Has becoming a father changed the way that you're approaching music?
Oh, wow. This wasn't one of the questions you prompted me.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I like it. That's a good question. In terms of changing the world, I think I'm still figuring that one out. But
yeah, right.
It definitely has changed. For one, I've written a hell of a lot of songs about that process of becoming a father, and the pregnancy and stuff, and which is interesting. Just to see kind of like, if I step outside of myself for a moment and go, oh, this is what being a songwriter and creative is. You take influence from whatever's happening to you, and it's a vessel of expression that sometimes perhaps you aren't able to do verbally in a conversation, or get out as something like the roller coaster of emotions that is becoming a father and having a child. Definitely has come out in a lot of songs I've written. Has it changed the way that I look for the future? For sure. I mean, stability and making sure that I'm providing is always, is whatever career or industry you're in, is something that you realize. All that matters to me right now is making sure that I give him the best opportunity. And to me, when I think back to those days when my mum made me take piano lessons, honestly, there were a lot of days I sat behind that piano and like, I hate this. Why do I have to do this? And she was quite strict with me. I used to get up at 6 and I would practice piano for an hour and saxophone for an hour before I got on the school bus at 8 a.m. to go off to school. And that was every morning. So there's some days I just wasn't in it, but she really taught me. For one, she gave me an amazing opportunity, and she also taught me the work ethic of like, you have to do this, and I in hindsight, owe her so much for what I've been able to achieve in my career, and do a job that I love and I'm passionate about, and that I can talk for hours about, and go to work and work 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. and not feel like I'm working. Do you know what I mean? Like she created that opportunity for me. So I want to do the same for him. That doesn't mean to say I will force him into music, but my wife's a dancer, so he has music from my side and dance and stuff from her side. So I just want to make sure the opportunity is there in whatever he chooses, and learn from the experience I had growing up.
Yeah, and that's the thing that my mom was really good at that too. Not with instruments. She'll be the first to admit that. She did though, but my mom let us try whatever we wanted. And that was one of the interesting things is, I remember one summer, she wanted us to try sports. And so she didn't sign us up and said, you got to take this class. She signed us up for about 20 different sports classes. And we tried all of them. And there was a really interesting thing that happened that summer. First thing I learned, I hate golf, like with a passion. It is not a sport I like. I don't know why. I hated walking through the grass. It made me itchy. And I really didn't have a great time in tennis. I don't know why. The racket wasn't the most fun to hold. And one of the things that I did in tennis, the most interesting thing that we did in tennis was trying to wedge the ball into the fence when you hit, the ball toward the fence. That was what we did. But, and I would say, well, were those failures? Actually, they were amazingly successful experiences, because learning what you don't like is also really important. And I also then, later on, I got into martial arts, and I realized I loved it. It's like a fish to water. But one of the things I talked about with my wife is just about giving our daughter experiences. So, we have this, I ordered a ton of musical instruments, little penny whistles, harmonicas, whatever. We've got the music box, and the kids dive in and they get to play whatever they want, put on some music and just, bang it out with it. And it doesn't sound great at right now, but they're 4 and 5. It doesn't need to sound great. It's just about, having some fun. But there is an interesting thing that you touched on there, that it was really challenging as a kid. I remember having this one dream when I was in high school, and it was this dream I had was an older version of me came from the future, came back and told young me, keep trying, you're going to make it. I was like, wow, that was a weird dream. But, I often wonder if existentially at some point in time, I'm going to have a dream where I go back in time and tell a young Sean, you can do it. But if you could go back in time and give a message to young you, what would the message be that you would tell your younger self?
It would probably just be encouragement at the right time. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it would be doing anything differently.
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person in life that ever wants to regret anything. Everything I've done has led me to where I am now, and so the things that might have been bad at some time or perhaps didn't happen how I wanted to me, that's my journey and I'm on it. I can accept that, but I do think that sometimes along everyone's journey there are times when you are like, it's really hard, and you obviously still manage to make it through. But in those moments, if there was a little bit of encouragement, even though that's from yourself, or something, I think that's what I would do. I remember, I won't go into the details of the people or the places, but there was one opportunity with my band where we'd spent about 3 months working with a massive management company that were managing 3 or 4 of the world's like top 20 artists, and they were like, oh, we really love what you do is really original and great. Put us in a studio and make an EP, and we were just our dreams have come true, this is it. And then we went on tour, and then we had a phone call. It was around Christmas, and like, can you meet us for dinner? And we're like, this is it, contract on the table, done, we're done. And we went for dinner with them, and with the CEO, and he kind of turned around and said to us, unfortunately, we're not able to work with you at this time because a number of reasons, but what was the weirdest explanation he gave was we were too good at what we did already to need to work with them, which felt like a really weird kind of like backhanded compliment.
It's like when someone breaks up with you and it's not you, it's me.
Exactly. We were self-managing ourselves, and honestly, we'd done it for a long time, and we were very good at it. We booked all our own shows and did all our own PR, and we toured, and we've done everything ourselves. And so he was saying, look, I would love to sign you, but I'm a kind of CEO. I don't manage anymore, and the day managers they haven't kind of bit the hook as much as I have, and I don't want to palm you off on someone who's not going to do as good a job as you, which it sounds like a fair.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
It's reasonable, but when you're 20, 23, it's 24, tough. And to hear that and just the rug ripped out from underneath you, that was probably the lowest point in our career as a band. And myself and my band partner, we had some long conversations at that point about like, let's just cut it in, let's just pack it in now. But we didn't. We ended up not doing it, and actually we achieved a lot more past that. So that was one of those moments where I think if I could have gone back and just been sat in the back of that restaurant and just kind of don't worry about it, mate, you'll be fine. That's something just to like bolster my confidence. Like
there was a principle that we learn in judo, and it was if I want to throw someone that way, I pull them this way because they're going to pull back that way. And then sometimes when they pull back that way, then I'll go this way. And the idea is that sometimes when you think you're going to end up going this way, the world sends you that way. And you just kind of have to adapt and still keep going with forward progress. I had this big thing that I was going to be an actor, moved up to LA, got into my first movie, and I stayed on it for 6 months, made a ton of money. And I was like, this is it, man. This is awesome. My career has begun, and I was meeting all these people, these big directors and people, and it was just, yeah, everything was. And then I had this wall, and it was interesting that it coincided with the 2008. There was this financial crisis in the U.S. and worldwide, and one of the interesting things that happened is that the film industry left LA, because places like New Orleans and Atlanta were offering like these incentives for the studios to make movies there. And so you suddenly had all of these people who had moved to Los Angeles to be filmmakers and actors and stuff, and everyone was working in restaurants and other jobs. And like, there was some really skilled people. And so anytime that there was anything going on work-wise, it was, you're up against 40 people just like you who had the same trade, some of them, more skilled than you. And it was one of those events that made me shift and step back, and was one of the reasons I moved back to Vietnam. And I just was like, I want to try something different. I want a new angle on life, because when you can only try to push a boulder up a hill so long before you just say, maybe I should just jump on this thing and ride down the hill, see where it takes me. Kind
For
of
sure, and you only get one opportunity to do it. That's why I say, that I don't think there's been a single time in my life where something bad has happened that hasn't been followed by an amazing opportunity or something else. And maybe you have to be a bit of an optimist to see that, to see the good in the things that come, or maybe you have to be proactive and make those things happen. But whatever it is, I don't know. But
one of my friends just had this film festival. One of my really good friends, she's a manager in Europe, and the theme of her film festival, it was a COVID film festival for her agency and her actors at her acting school. And the theme and the motto for the film festival was falling apart into place. And I love that concept of like, so many times there's this cartoon, not a cartoon, but like a comic on the internet, and it's this little dog, and he's standing in what looks like hell, and the room is on fire around him, and it's like, this caption is, everything is fine. And I always laugh when I see that, because I'm like, that's my life. It's so many people's lives, it's just like, you're like, wow, everything's fine. If you had, go ahead.
Falling together rather than falling apart, right?
Yeah, falling together, right?
Yeah.
It really is. It's like the dominoes all fall into place, and you might not see that the dominoes are connected. You might not see that there's this path, but there might be. And even if there isn't, you can stop. You can start steering it. And that's the thing too. Like, we have these ideas of fate, you know what I mean? Like, those bad events happen, and then, luck happens and good things happen. No, it's like bad things happen, and we are forced to make changes and to go, hey, let's try something different. Like, there's that personal power that still comes into place as well. Life gives us the opportunity, but it's still on us to open the door, I remember I was walking up the street in Los Angeles, and I had applied for a bunch of jobs. And I remember this one call, and I said to myself, well, if I don't get this job, I'm just going to move back to Vietnam, because I'd lived here before and I loved it. And call came through, and she's like, yeah, you're not right for us. And I was like, all right. And I'm so glad everything fell apart, because I have an amazing family and a beautiful daughter. Now I want to ask you one last question before we finish up.
Okay.
What does success look like for you? Now, nothing simple to end the night, right?
Yeah, right. Success. Oh, I mean, to me, it's always been about being happy doing what I want to do, and of course we all chase the dream of the high dizzying heights of whatever that is, achieving winning Grammys or whatever your industry is. But those things to me are the extras. To me, success for me is what I'm doing now. You know, I love what I'm doing. I couldn't. Every day I wake up and I'm happy, and I want to go to work, and I want to do these things. So I couldn't. I would feel so. What's the word? I would hate to be the person that was like, can't see the wood for the trees, can't appreciate what they have, because there's always the one thing. I have met and worked with some people that are like that, and they've been very successful and they're never happy. And it's because the minute they reach goal here, they're like, oh, I want to be the next one, and they never appreciate the moment they're in at that point. And I think that's if you can appreciate that, you're successful already.
There's this great proverb from the Taoist book, the Tao Te Ching, and it simply says, whether you go up a ladder or down a ladder, your position's always unstable. The idea is to just realize that wherever you're at is beautiful. You know, it's like people who are always trying to climb higher. There's nothing wrong with that, if you can still enjoy just where you're at. You know, my daughter, I was editing something the other day, and my daughter was like, Daddy, look at this. And, you know, for a second I was like, hold on, Daddy's working. And I stopped myself. I was like, hold on. And I said, what do you want to show me? And I mean, there was times to work, but I turned over and she's like, look, I drew this for you. And it was just this really special moment that I had to check myself to stop and to make sure that I was able to appreciate that moment. And, you know, and then then I said, thank you. And I went back and I appreciated the project that I was working on, but it was about that, just being present in it. But I like what you said, that like, you really enjoy going to work. That sounds beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you'd love to share with the people listening tonight? Any last thoughts?
Not really. Without getting too, I don't know. Do what you do and love it, and that's, you know, listen to music. Listen to more music. What are you listening to right now? Oh, I've been on a bit of an old school Motown kickback, like
nice
rebellion. I would say I'm rebelling against digital instruments right now, like, you know, in terms of like synthesizers and music in the computers, and the ability to create sounds that are kind of anything that don't sound real. When I listen back now to, you know, a real drum kit and bass and guitar and a Rhodes keyboard, and just the composition of those 4 or 5 elements put together in a great vocal, it's all recorded live and played live, and you know, there's no changing it past the point of recording. I'm enjoying that right now, and that's in my mind. In my mind now, also as I'm producing, I'm leaning in that tendency as well.
Well, I would absolutely love to bring you back on and do a deep dive into the differences between those two, the digital world and kind of, would you call it more of an analog or just a traditional type of an instrument?
I would call it live versus synthetic.
I like that.
If I had to put a title on it, yeah.
Well, I would love if we could schedule another time to dive in a month or so, or a couple of weeks, and dive into that. But thank you so much for coming in tonight, man. That was absolutely amazing, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Take care, brother.